we noticed like a liquid that was dripping down the window.
What the hell is that?
It's some of the worst stuff I've ever seen.
It would hurt to breathe. It started to sting.
You get it in your clothes, you get it in your skin, it's in your hair.
And I thought, oh no, the damn things are in the fridge.
There's something wrong.
This is getting out of control.
3 different families fighting 3 different infestations. Home is a sanctuary, but invaders don't respect boundaries. Our 4 walls provide all they need to survive, to thrive, and to multiply. And when they move in, home will never feel the same again. Newly single Wanda Butt and her 18-year-old son Chad are starting over.
The relationship I was in at the time had just dissolved, and it was a nasty breakup. We were going to have a whole new apartment in a whole new neighborhood. You know, I had a new job that I was just starting.
I was excited about the new place. I was looking forward to setting up my room and having friends over and everything.
The apartment is small, but Wanda and Chad are working hard to save for something better.
Any shifts that came up for me, I was grasping because we desperately needed the income. And Chad was working whenever he could. He was working part-time nights and doing his studies during the day in school.
Wanda still finds time to give their home a thorough cleaning. And something catches her eye.
And we were finding what looked like some kind of a little plant pod. And I had never seen anything like that. And at the time, we were wondering what kind of a plant that could have come from.
Soon after moving in, Wanda and Chad head out of town to visit family. They return home a week later.
When we got back, we were both just spent, and I knew I had to get up in the morning to work. So we didn't even take the time to cook anything. We had just went out and bought takeout.
It was really good to be home and just settle back in.
I just laid the bags and stuff on the counter. I thought, well, when we leave for work in the morning, we'll just take those and throw them in the garbage. It's not a big deal. I came out early in the morning to get a drink, and I could hear the bag move on the counter. What the hell is that? It was the most unbelievable thing I had ever seen.
600 miles away in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Jen Martinez is rushed to the hospital, where she's diagnosed with a potentially fatal lung infection.
I went to the doctor and I needed to have some x-rays to make sure there wasn't, large amounts of fluid in my lungs that could be potentially, really dangerous.
Jen has been struck down by a rare disease, mostly found in people who go into caves. A few months earlier, Jen and partner Mark Greka face a much more familiar challenge: finding a home. They want greenery. They want space. They want to be close to the schools their 3 children attend. A top-floor apartment in Leafy Hales Corners seems perfect.
It was really nice and quiet.
We didn't have to worry about anybody upstairs causing any extra noise or walking around.
We took the lease out for a year, and then we're going to re-sign for another year. I love that house.
A month after moving in, Jen and Mark notice something strange about their new home.
It was kind of like a brushing almost. It was like someone was sweeping. It sounded like someone was sweeping upstairs. I didn't really think there was anything to worry about. If a house has been there for a while, there's noises in the night, you know, the house settling, things like that. So, you know, at that point, I wasn't too worried about it.
A few nights later, they hear the mysterious noise again.
Maybe someone was throwing something. The kids were throwing up, you know, acorns or something in the roof. I really didn't know what it was.
The next night, it gets worse.
We would sitting on our couch watching a movie, all of a sudden it'd be right above us and we would just jump because it was so loud.
This time, it goes on through the night.
It's kind of frightening to sit in your house and having to listen to that, and you're not really sure what it is. My kids heard something like someone was in the attic, and they thought that there was ghosts, so they came running out into the bedroom.
The family is now losing sleep. Mark worries that somehow somebody may be getting into the attic or even living there. He checks with the neighbors. No one has any answers. Jen alerts the building management.
I left a message and I said, you know, there's something up in the attic and someone needs to come over here because I don't know who it is or what it is, but they're very loud and it sounds like they're going to come through our ceiling.
The property manager doesn't return her call. That night, when Mark's at work, Jen's too afraid to stay inside the house.
I was really thinking that someone was trying to break in, you know, and they couldn't do it, so they were going to come back later on. That's when I started to kind of get to panicky.
And then I get a phone call from Jen, really hysterical. I'm getting out of the apartment. Somebody is definitely up in our attic area.
I told him he needed to go up and find out what it is.
With no response from the building management, Mark gets a friend to help him investigate.
I actually thought that it could be somebody up there. And as I'm taking the hatch up off to peek my head into the attic area, I'm a little hesitant because I have no idea, and I'm a little jittery because I'm hearing noises. And I'm looking right around me to see if there's anybody around me. And as I'm scanning with the flashlight, I see a set of eyes. And I kind of like, whoa, what is it?
And all of a sudden, he goes, they're raccoons, and they're big.
The attic is being torn apart by more raccoons than Mark can count.
An attic is a perfect environment for a raccoon. It provides a nice, open, dark space that's sheltered from the elements, gives them plenty of room to have babies. In urban and suburban areas where natural habitat isn't as available, you're going to find much larger groups of raccoons living together.
It's a relief to identify the mysterious disturbances. Jen knows raccoons can be dangerous, but the solution seems straightforward.
I thought, oh, okay, well, those are raccoons, and we can just call, you know, animal control, and they'll come pick them up, and, you know, it'll be done. I really don't have to worry about anything.
She leaves another message with building management, but hears nothing back. That night, the raccoons are as noisy as ever. Jen and Mark try to figure out how the pests are getting inside their attic.
There was quite a large tree that was next to our unit. I would say it was at least, you know, maybe like 5 foot jump from the branch that was hanging closest to the house. We kind of figured out that they were getting up there from that tree.
Raccoons are amazingly dexterous, unlike a dog or a cat, which really aren't able to use their feet. A raccoon is amazingly well designed to use its hands. They can open things, they can tear things open with their claws, and they literally can grab and pull much in the same way that we would. With the exception, possibly, of Fort Knox, there really isn't any facility in the United States that's going to be safe from a raccoon.
Mark bypasses the management and takes his plea to building maintenance.
I told them, hey, look, here's how they're coming in. If you guys can just fix this, they can't get in anymore.
They send a contractor to trap the raccoons. But as fast as they're trapped, more take their place in the attic. The noise escalates until it's almost unbearable. But Jen and Mark are about to find out that the noise is the least of their worries. In Ottawa, Canada, Wanda Butt awakes to strange sounds coming from a bag of empty takeout containers.
What the hell is that? Oh my God, they're cockroaches. I had never ever had a problem in my home with bugs. I actually associated cockroaches with filth. If somebody's house was crawling with cockroaches, it's because they were disgustingly dirty.
Wanda goes into a cleaning frenzy, hoping that a spotless apartment will drive the cockroaches away. But roaches aren't looking for dirt.
I decided I wanted to go get a snack. I had a already open bag of nachos in the cupboard. I had noticed bugs crawling up from under the tortilla shells. I had completely lost my appetite.
We couldn't keep anything in our cupboard. Everything that was not in a completely sealed container had cockroaches in it.
If you leave a bag of food or even food scraps on your counter, one cockroach at least will find that within an hour, because once it gets dark, they're coming to hunt. Pheromone will call other cockroaches to consume that food.
There was a bag of pasta, and cockroaches were literally crawling out of the macaroni. It was the most stomach-churning thing.
The only safe place left to keep food is in the fridge.
We literally could not leave a crumb anywhere. We couldn't even put the dog food on the floor.
While cleaning, Wanda finds more of the same strange seeds she saw when she moved in. A quick search online is horribly revealing.
These little flower pods, they were actually the sacks that the baby cockroaches come in.
If you're finding lots of egg sacs in your house, you have an infestation. You could easily have tens of thousands of cockroaches in a home without difficulty.
Wanda calls the building managers, demanding help.
I started making calls to anybody that would listen. It was almost a belittling situation to go through, because when you're talking to people, they're telling you, okay, well, maybe you should contact this department, and I'm going to refer you to this one.
Nobody responds to Wanda's complaints. So she and Chad decide to trap the roaches themselves.
We had sticky pads all over the apartment and had them end to tail, end to tail, end to tail, so that we would catch them coming up and down the walls. And in a period of 48 hours, we trapped in excess of 100 cockroaches on a sticky pad.
The sticky pad is an excellent survey method, but as far as a pest control method, it's worthless. One mated female can live for 150 days on average. She will produce 240 eggs in her lifetime. Half of those will be females, which will begin breeding. And at the end of the year, if there's food, 58,000 cockroaches can be produced.
In Florida, in 2009, neighbors in one apartment complex learned how quickly a cockroach invasion can get out of hand. They noticed so many roaches spilling out from this home, they called the landlord. Pest controllers found a massive infestation of over 100,000 roaches.
Cockroaches have been around for 200 million years and an incredibly successful species, but the ones that cause the most trouble are the ones that are associated with us. Basically, cockroaches live with us, eat what we eat, like our temperatures, homes, and lifestyle, and they've spread with us all over the world.
When she gets no response from the building management, Wanda tries to shame them into action. She calls her local radio station, which sends a reporter.
You're listening to Auto Morning.
Okay, let's start with my front door. This was a main entry point, and you can see the dead cockroaches.
At this point, we were willing to do anything to get these bugs under control. We literally had nowhere else to go.
Her strategy works. An exterminator is sent to the apartment.
So at that point, we figured we have like a professional exterminator, so the situation was gonna be solved.
For the first time since moving in, Wanda and Chad relax. As the apartment starts to feel like home, and they get back into a normal routine. Wanda's up early the next morning for her new job.
I think it was around 4:30-ish in the morning, and I just went into the kitchen. The floor came to life with bugs. They literally went everywhere. They were under the door. They went behind the cupboards. They ran under the fridge. It was the most insane thing I had ever seen. At that point, I really thought we are really screwed.
The cockroach likes to go into little cracks and crevices where there might be some breadcrumbs that have been left behind and not cleaned up properly. And so this gives it a huge advantage on finding food that we might not even know is in our homes. Even though we think we've cleaned up, we've left all this food available for it.
The next day, Wanda bumps into a neighbor who delivers some shocking news.
My dear, she said, we're getting a petition going to get rid of the cockroaches in this building.
The entire building is infested. The only way to eliminate the roaches is to spray every single apartment with pesticides. Unfortunately, not everybody wants that to happen.
There was one excessively infested apartment, and his religious beliefs did not allow him to kill anything. So his apartment was basically a Club Med for cockroaches. You could see them coming out from under his door.
Apartments are probably the greatest bonanza for cockroach populations that we've ever produced. Even if you try to control them, in most of the apartments in that building, one apartment that's not participating becomes the mothership breeding site from which new infestations will continually reappear.
And the more there are, the more relentless their hunt for food becomes. Suddenly, the roaches are everywhere, even in the places Wanda thought were roach-proof.
And I thought, oh no, the damn things are in the fridge.
Streaky Bay, a small farming community in South Australia. This is the grain belt, the only part of the continent where enough rain usually falls to grow wheat and barley. Farmers' livelihoods are at the mercy of the elements.
There are a lot of risks. Weather is the key ingredient. No rainfall, no crop, no lifestyle, no happy wife.
But once every generation, the weather conspires to create a living nightmare for this tight-knit community. Nobody knows when it will happen, only that it will at some point. The farmers are always on the lookout for telltale signs.
When you're out checking your livestock, you see hawks circling around. They're all circling overhead.
If there's evidence on the ground, it will confirm Phil's fears.
Whilst driving about, you see extra holes in the ground that you don't normally see.
It's not the holes that worry the farmers. It's what's in them.
At that stage, the numbers were there, but it wasn't a real concern.
Phil checks with other farmers to find out what they're seeing on their land.
There were a lot more active holes than usual. You don't have to have very many active holes, maybe 4 or 5, and you already know you've got a problem. It's coming down the track.
The farmers have come to learn. Hawks and holes mean trouble is on the way. Phil starts to make nightly checks of his fields. The signs point to one horrific reality. A mouse plague is brewing. The fields run right up to Streaky Bay homes. Mother of 3, Kelly Lake, is finding mice in her house.
It started off with the odd 1 or 2, maybe 3. It is disgusting to see like mice running over my kids' toys, on their beds. I was worried about my kids with all the mice running around in the house.
The risk of disease from mice is real.
You get salmonella just by contact with mouse urine or mouse feces. If they get into your kitchen, you might put your food on the kitchen counter, and if a mouse has been across that area, you could get it that way.
Just got more and more each day.
Mice are showing up everywhere.
Particularly around the sheds, I was noticing mice numbers increasing. There was more activity. To see them during the middle of the day was meaning that they were hungry.
For them to move around during the day, when they're more vulnerable to, say, predators, then there's a lot of mice around, and they're obviously not able to compete with the other mice moving around at night. If I was seeing mice moving around during the day, I would start to be very concerned.
All around Streaky Bay, farmers now see ominous signs of a gathering storm.
Mice numbers were gradually building and building.
Mice breed very quickly. Females can be reproductively active at about 6 weeks of age. Once they've given birth, they will actually mate immediately again, so that while they're nursing 1 litter of young, they're actually pregnant with the second. So there's a continual cycle of reproductive output that the females are capable of.
She's a little factory on legs, just pumping them out, pumping them out.
A mouse plague has begun. Streaky Bay faces a farming apocalypse. Ottawa, Canada. Wanda Butt battles an infestation of roaches. She cleans meticulously, but still the insects overrun every corner of her home. Now, they are even in her fridge.
You could actually see where these cockroaches had crawled in and out of our butter dish.
Cockroaches hate the cold and typically avoid refrigerators. But when the population is large, competition for food is fierce.
If you're seeing cockroaches in the fridge, you have 10,000 plus cockroaches in your home.
That was the point when I realized they're actually everywhere now. There's not a thing we can do to keep our food safe.
The cockroach has an incredible potential to spread disease because they're walking across excrement around the backs of your toilets. Any urine at all on the floor, they're walking through that. They'll walk through sewers. They'll go outside to find dead animals. And any disease on that, E. coli, anything, they will take and spread on your table, your counters, your cutlery, your cups, your plates.
One morning I had woken up and I had went out to go brush my teeth. I opened the cabinet and first thing I seen was actually 2 cockroaches running across my toothbrush. It was really, really disgusting.
A wet toothbrush is a perfect place for cockroaches to find food. The cockroach is essentially eating the residue from your teeth and drinking the water, and of course, leaving feces behind.
Chad can't take it anymore. He goes to visit his father for Christmas.
It almost sounds selfish, but I felt good about leaving.
It was unbelievable knowing that your child wants to get the hell out of the house and home that you've provided for him. That was really frustrating. That was a heartbreaking thing.
But with the entire apartment building still crawling with roaches, there is no refuge.
Cockroaches do not generally want to crawl on people at night, but of course they're driven by the search for food and moisture. So if you're sleeping at night, you're breathing, you may be drooling a little bit out of the side of your mouth, and cockroaches will want to drink that water.
Wanda is only left with one option.
It got to the point of where I figured if they're not going to do anything, I'm going to start holding back rent payments.
Wanda's protest draws attention from the building managers. The wrong kind. They respond by evicting her and Chad.
I don't think anybody should have to pay to live in a situation like that. I'm probably one of the few people that can actually say when I got evicted, I was relieved we were out of there.
They move over 1,000 miles away to start afresh with family in St. John's, Newfoundland.
Flat out, full stop, no questions asked. The roaches actually won out over everything done to get rid of them in that building. And I would lay $1 to donuts if you went back and checked today, it's still infested with them.
In the very worst cases, we can have millions of cockroaches in an apartment block. These become just turned over to cockroaches, and we have those in every city in North America.
Jen Martinez and Mark Greca have discovered raccoons in the attic above their apartment. Building maintenance traps the noisy pests. Soon the traps are empty. But it's not because the raccoons have moved out.
The raccoons figured out that they can get in the traps. They were eating the cat food and leaving the empty jars upside down, and they were leaving the traps empty. They were just feeding the raccoons, basically.
Jen knows the raccoons are still there. She and her family are kept awake every night.
I laid there until it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and they wouldn't stop all night long. It sounded like someone was taking like small bowling balls. It was that loud, and throwing them against our ceiling.
At nighttime, what you'll find with baby raccoons and with adult raccoons is they're very interactive with each other. They'll fight with each other, they'll play with each other, and you're going to hear those noises. They're going to range from chirping noises all the way on up to screaming noises, and they can really be quite frightening, almost like a haunted house.
A cozy den site, like an empty attic, is prime raccoon real estate.
Once a den has been established, particularly if it's established by a female raccoon, you're going to be very likely to attract other raccoons to that area.
In the suburbs, there is no shortage of raccoons making a line for a favorable site.
We're seeing approximately a 10-fold increase in the raccoon population in urban and suburban areas.
Now, people and raccoons are locked on a collision course.
As we take down their natural habitat, we're providing environments like attics, like garages, which can house many more raccoons than you would normally see in a park or woodland setting.
Jen pleads with building management to help.
They could have trimmed or cut down the tree. They could have repaired the flashings.
It's like we're paying rent for the raccoons to live upstairs. I couldn't take it anymore.
Jen and Mark consider moving out.
We didn't have the money to move all over again. You know, first month's rent security deposit is a lot to come up with.
I was so upset to the point where this is getting out of control.
And it gets worse. The raccoons are making this turf their own.
I started looking around the house and I would see like yellow stains, like water damage.
Mark worries the raccoons may have damaged the roof. But this fear is soon replaced by a much uglier realization.
It got to the point where the kids were like, it smells bad in here, and we were burning candles constantly.
The smell was really, it was very pungent.
The whole family develops a nagging cough.
It would hurt to breathe. It started to sting, actually, when you would try to take in a breath. And I thought, there's something wrong. I rarely get sick.
Jen's suspicion is right. Something is severely wrong, as she discovers when she's rushed to the hospital.
The doctor listened to my lungs, and she said, well, there's something, I can hear something in your lungs.
The doctor diagnoses histoplasmosis. It's a rare and potentially fatal lung infection, triggered by fungal spores that grow on feces, typically in bat-infested caves.
It's really not a disease of someone who lives in a household. I mean, they're living in a house that has windows in it, and yet still they're picking up a disease that classically you're only ever going to pick up underground.
I felt very defeated. I felt like this is taking such a drastic control of my life.
One raccoon that just goes to your bathroom once in your attic, you're not going to have histoplasmosis. It's an indicator of devastation, basically. I mean, you've really it's got to be horrific.
Jen is in the hospital for a week. When she leaves, nothing will prepare her for what the raccoons do next. In South Australia, a plague of mice overwhelms the farm town of Streaky Bay. Mouse numbers on this scale can wipe out a harvest and a family's life savings.
It's at the back of your mind as to what effect is it going to have on us when harvest time comes around.
The Streaky Bay farmers face a make-or-break decision. This is the time to sow, but they're afraid that the seed will simply feed the mouse plague. If they don't sow, they won't get a second chance. No harvest means losing most of their income for the year, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You've got to go for it. If you don't get it out the ground and growing, you've missed the boat for the whole season.
Despite their fears, Phil and the other farmers gamble and sow their crop. But the seed they're planting is disappearing.
As fast as you're putting the grain in the ground, they were going back and digging it up.
They were running along, pulling the grain out, eating the seed off the bottom, going on to the next one, doing the same thing.
Mice eat a lot. Their metabolic rate is about 7 times faster than a person, and they will eat about 20% of their body weight a day. So can you imagine eating almost a quarter of your body weight every day?
The farmers hope that enough of the wheat will survive to make a small harvest. The plague is spreading beyond the farmers' fields and into the surrounding homes.
The mice were getting into everything they could, in your wardrobes, your drawers.
The desperate homeowners can't hold back the tide of mice with traps.
You'd set them all before you went to bed. If you heard any go off while you were awake, you'd get up and change them again. One night we had 30 in our house, trap after trap.
The farmers use water troughs to trap the mice. The sea is the only place around Streaky Bay not infested with the rodents. This is a plague of biblical proportions.
The development of a plague doesn't just suddenly happen. You need right rain at the right time, good food, and a number of different factors all working together to continue to build the size of that mouse population to what we eventually see as a plague. And the problem with a plague is that nobody notices it's coming until it's too late.
The mice usually avoid daylight to hide from predators like hawks and snakes. Only in a plague will they appear during the day in huge numbers.
You pick up a sheet of iron and the ground moves under your feet.
At night, when the mice prefer to emerge, the true extent of the plague is staggering.
To be in the middle of a mouse plague is a surreal experience. They were everywhere. The ground's moving, they're going in all directions.
You could see down the front of our house, the ground was just moving. It was just mice.
The locals can't leave their homes. If they drive, they risk skidding off the road. Farmers don't want to go into their barns.
The ground's moving, the walls are moving, things are running on rafters, they're going in all directions. I've had a few go up my trouser leg, it's not a good feeling.
There is no refuge from the plague anywhere.
The smell of it all, that's the part that really got to you.
Oh, the stench is putrid and you can't get rid of it.
It's one that makes you want to hold your breath. You get it in your clothes, you get it in your skin, it's in your hair. Whatever you touch, they've defecated on. It's all sticky, so your hands are sticky. You put your hands on the steering wheel, that gets sticky. You want to wash your hands all the time. It's rank.
The mice are also highly destructive.
They chewed everything in sight. Plastics, wood, carpets, floor coverings, upholstery, electrical wiring.
One of the reasons that mice are so destructive is that they constantly need to keep gnawing things because those teeth never stop growing. So if they're not constantly chewing on things to wear down those teeth, they'll just grow too long and then they won't be able to feed properly.
The horrific infestation is now threatening the farmer's future. Bales of hay to feed cattle over the winter are alive with vermin.
Every time you pick up a bale of hay and you see them jumping, pandemonium.
They were everywhere. They were underneath them and on top of them and on the side of them. The haystacks were alive with mice, all over them, everywhere.
Mouse urine and feces make the hay inedible. The farmers have no option but to burn their cattle's winter feed.
There's lots of times where I just want to scream at your top of your lungs and I've had enough of this. What have I ever done to deserve this.
Farmers still cling to the hope that some wheat will grow. But the worst of the mouse plague is yet to come. In Milwaukee, Jen Martinez spends a week in the hospital with a rare lung infection caused by fungal spores growing on raccoon feces.
It would hurt to breathe. It started to sting, actually, when you would try to take in a breath.
All attempts to remove the raccoons from her attic have failed.
I felt very defeated. This is taking such a drastic control of my life.
When doctors allow Jen to go home, she discovers a shocking sight.
We noticed like a liquid that was kind of dripping down the window. And when you would walk over to it, you could start to smell it. Disgusting doesn't describe it.
The mess and the odor are becoming overwhelming.
It just hit you like a ton of bricks.
In an environment like an attic, where you're going to have raccoons that are urinating and defecating over a long period of time, you're going to get a significant accumulation of waste in that area.
With raccoon feces dripping onto her children's clothes, Jen and partner Mark are at the breaking point. The apartment is dangerous to their health, but they can't afford to move. They'll lose their deposit if they abandon their lease. They're stuck.
We're coming home, we're kind of like dreading, hey, the raccoon's gonna be there tonight, or what's the deal? And as we walk through our front door, I'm looking up at the ceiling.
It's collapsed under the weight of the wet filth piling up in their attic.
I was in shock. There was urine-soaked feces and insulation all over our couch. I just thought I couldn't deal with it anymore.
I got the kids out, took them over to grandparents. I said, first thing I'm going down tomorrow morning, I'm going straight to the health department.
The health inspector arrives the next morning.
So as he's going in the attic, he goes, oh my God, this is some of the worst stuff I've ever seen. And the next thing I know, he fell through our ceiling.
Unable to take any more, Jen and Mark move out.
I had called the manager and I explained the situation. I said, where are you gonna put us up? You're gonna put us in a hotel until this is cleaned up and fixed. Am I right? And they said, no, we don't do that. So we packed up some bags and I told my mom, we have to come and stay with you because we have to find a place to live.
They forfeit their deposit.
It's very heartbreaking packing up what little belongings you can fit into a duffel bag with 3 kids.
Once, wild animals and people were only likely to mix in rural areas. Mark and Jen have discovered nature's rules are changing.
Raccoons are not an invasive species. Raccoons were here before us. So as we encroach on their territory, they adapt to live in ours.
In Streaky Bay, South Australia, farmers discover that their recently sown wheat crop has failed to grow.
Nothing grew. Nothing come out the ground.
It has been eaten by a plague of mice. Farmers like Phil Wheaton have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Worse, the only remedy is to spend extra money trying to kill the mice with poisoned bait. It's expensive, and many of the Streaky Bay farms are so large, it's impossible to put down enough poison.
I lost a lot of crop. It just was a physical impossibility to try and bait 6,000 acres.
Controlling a mouse plague is possible, but only if you have cooperation of a very broad area. If farmers in adjacent areas haven't baited, then you have a nice field with no mice in it, and all the other fields around have got lots of mice in them, and they're all going to move straight back into the area that has just been emptied of mice.
The farmers simply can't poison the mice fast enough to hold down the numbers. And their natural allies, hawks and snakes and foxes, are also vastly outnumbered.
It's something that builds and builds and builds and builds, and it just doesn't get any better. It's just a slow thing that eats and eats at you. You're wishing for it to end. You can't see a way out.
The farmers are powerless to stop the tide of mice by themselves. Australia is not the only country to suffer mouse plagues like this. They have erupted in the US. One outbreak in 1927 in California saw 80,000 mice per acre ravaging the crops.
Mouse plague can cost you millions and millions of dollars. Not only in lost crop and production, but mice will chew through agriculture equipment, causing all sorts of damage to infrastructure.
The plague starts to collapse after the land is devastated and the mice have consumed everything edible. All that's left is each other.
When you were on the turn, when they started eating themselves,
Usually populations get so dense that they basically run out of food. When the mice start to run out of food, they will turn on each other and start fighting, and then they'll start eating each other. So you'd start getting a lot of cannibalism within the population.
you thought, you beauty, it's happening. You know that it's in sight, the end is near.
Starvation and cold, wet weather finish off the plague. But this relief is too late for the war-torn farmers.
I've lost a year of production, I've lost a year of income, I've lost $130,000 to $150,000 stone cold.
The mouse plague has devastated Streaky Bay. At least now it's over. But farmers can't rest easy, because nobody knows when a plague will rise again.
It's one of the most frustrating times that I've ever come across. I wasn't in control of our destiny.
I was one of the farmers that were completely wrong. I didn't think that it would get to where it got to because I thought nature might level it out. But by crikey, I was dead wrong.
Pests may be unwelcome visitors, but there's never been a time when our homes have been free from invaders. That's not likely to change anytime soon.
Our homes are the perfect environment for pests for the same reason that they're the perfect environment for us. They're warm, they're secure, they're safe, and that's where we store our food.